So, hi, I'm Sarah Levesque, the editor of Logo Sophia magazine, and with me today I have Joshua David Ling, who, in addition to being an amazing storyteller himself, has also helped this magazine a good deal between writing and editing audio, video, and whatever else you can lay your hands on.
Yeah, pretty
So,
much.
how are you doing, Joshua?
Not bad, not bad. Just busy with all kinds of stuff, trying to get back on top of it after the Fight Laugh Feast conference this past week and just focusing on, like I said, just getting things in order. So
There you go. Um, so, tell us a little about yourself.
My name is Joshua Ling. I'm a storyteller. I've been telling stories since I was a wee tot in diapers, as my website says. I'll read some of this and then maybe expound. So that's why I'm looking over here. But just yeah, my mom and dad couldn't stop me no matter how hard they tried. Of course, it didn't help that I had a steady stream of Diet of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and other anachronistic tales that instilled in me a sense of wonder, longing, and chivalry. Though I'm over 30 years old, 32, I just wrote that so I wouldn't have to change it every year. I still can't help but feel the tingle in my fingers every time I pick up a book. That's only half true, as we may or may not find out going into my I've mentioned it before on various shows, my dyslexia. I almost said autism, dyslexia. Anyway, I still can't help but feel the tingle when I pick up a book. But now I mostly read them to my children and wife as a way of discipling them and leading them to love the beauty and universal truths found within the pages of enrapturing fiction. In my own stories, I
Mm.
seek to combine elements and characters that continue to show those universal truths for the inherent beauty they already possess, and to primarily glorify the creator of the greatest tale ever told. Hint, it's the one you're living now.
Is that straight off your website or?
Yes. Yes. So a bunch of this is from my actually maybe just that's from my website. I can't remember how much I copied and pasted. There's a few things like descriptions that we'll get to that are from my website, but other stuff I just wrote for the answers. So,
There you go.
yep.
That's the good thing about getting the answers, the questions in advance is you can write whatever you
Yes.
need to.
Yes, exactly. And like I really do enjoy just having conversation, but it's one of those things where when I am in a situation where I'm pitching myself, I want to have it somewhat written or by rote or, something in my brain that I can just rattle off. And this is a good way to do that. Have something on your website that you go back to, or have something clear that you can write down. So
Absolutely. So tell us about what you write.
I write sci-fi, fantasy, and more in epic poetry snippets. I call them bricks. They are vertical video format on all kinds of platforms, and they're cumulative, meaning they go from one chapter to another. And I just continue, serializing them until they end. And I continue in several worlds at once, and I use dice. We can get into that if we want to choose which chapter is next. I actually have a jar of dice, and there's a coin in there, and I have a way of rolling them and seeing what's up. But let's see, dice. And I have a long-term outlines to keep myself from getting off track. That's actually what I spend most of my time doing writing, is outlining and world building. And then I just write them as needed. And poetry is one of the things that keeps everything aesthetically intact. I don't have to worry as much with poetry, even though I do. Poetry is one of those things that the aesthetic comes from the rhythm a little bit more than the vocabulary. And so it's a thing where if I can keep the rhythm going in a way that works with the story, it keeps all the aesthetics kind of glued together properly. Yep.
There you go. I'm trying to minimize the noise on this end. I had a helicopter and I had cars going by. A little crazier than normal today for some
I've
reason.
done a Poets at War outside before with Daniel and Aaron Reed, and that was interesting too. I know how that goes.
Yeah. Um, so when did you start writing and why?
I started writing probably around 2003. Now that's actually writing. I drew sequential story art as like a 3-year old and stapled them together in books. So like that's going way back. Mario and Luigi had crossovers with Luke Skywalker and others and things of that nature. So
That's great.
my kids do that now too. But I started really actually trying to write stuff in about 2003 because of the rise of Flash animation, Albino Black Sheep, Homestar Runner, stuff like that. Some of you all might know about those. And I wanted to, and I was also gifted these characters in my brain and in my imagination that just wouldn't shut up. Rather, they wouldn't shut up. They showed up a lot. They wouldn't shut up. Most of my early stories were mainly focused on superheroes. A lot of my stories are still focused on superheroes, but my earliest characters, though they've evolved some, are still mostly intact in my Superhero Alliance Patrol Ensemble comedy series. Um, so yeah,
Superhero Alliance Patrol Ensemble.
shape.
Please tell me they don't say that on a regular
No, it's shape.
basis.
It's shape. SHAPE.
Okay.
Superhero Alliance Patrol Ensemble.
Oh, I see. That makes sense.
Yep.
So, which story do you want to talk about specifically? So I know you've got a whole lot of things.
Yeah. It said, how did I come up with the idea for this specifically? I mentioned the last one I worked on, which was Worldwide Warrior, which is part of my main superhero universe. It's separate from the comedy sort of thing I just mentioned, but I came up with Braden's story because I specifically wanted to address the idea of race and culture in a way that is both proud of the heritage that God gives in every individual, and also noting that we are all equal by our Adamic nature. We are all fallen in Adam, and there is uh, a shared heritage in that, and it is both shameful and joyous because we were created good in the first place, and then everything got messed up. So we all have that in common, and I. It's a story I'll tell you very briefly about. It's a guy who has just about every bloodline you could possibly imagine, as far as ethnicities go. And he is contracted by an anonymous uh, uh, caregiver, so to speak, to travel the world and both deal diplomatically in incognito and deal, violently on occasion behind a mask, etc., to deal with some of the most global international crises. And so he's very much even though he has some help, his story is much more about the individual. I tend to work with teams, superhero teams, because I like, working off each other. But I really wanted to deal with something also on an individual level and someone who has sort of the weight of the world on his shoulders. So that's kind of the focus of Worldwide Warrior. You're muted.
Alrighty.
There we go.
So, how is this story different than your other ones? Because how many stories do you have running at once before we get to that?
Well, I'd have to count real quick, but the let me see here. I'll just do it real quick. But the I have some series in Poetry Bricks format that are not stories. Some of them are highlights of other books like Narnia and Lord of the Rings. Some of them are my own poems that are standalone. Some of them are songs, Bible. I have some Bible ones where I'm doing specific, highlights of the Bible. But the ones that are original, I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that I am currently writing, but I also have some spin-off series that I'm kind of playing with that are basically like they're not chronologically available yet. Things have to happen in other stories for those spin-offs to actually begin. So the answer to your question, long and short, is 9. So
Wow. Is that nine that you work on regularly or nine, like some that you work on regularly and some irregularly? Because
Um,
that's a lot of things to juggle.
well, what I actually do, this is where the dice comes in handy. A lot of people go, "Oh, are you divining? Are you throwing runes?" And I'm like, "No." What I'm actually doing is, first of all, I am a reformed Christian who believes that God has predestined everything, so that would include dice, and so it's not like it's a supernatural divination to throw dice and throw to flip a coin, whatever, and figure out the situation. It's just part of the natural order of things. And so what I do is I actually have these and I will toss them out and get my answer as to which world I will work in and how long I will work in it between. I've had issues, but I recently figured this out. The minimum I feel like I can actually get in and actually get something done is about 30 minutes. That gives me a second to really immerse myself in the world, get contextualized as to where I am in my workflow, and then at least spit something out, right?
Mm-hmm.
My maximum that I can do without feeling guilty that I'm not getting everything else done is about 2 hours. I feel like 2 hours,
Okay.
I can watch a movie in 2 hours, So for me, I have a four-sided dice in here, which is just a little pyramid. Let's see if I can get it here. And I throw this one along with my 20-sided, which is, let's see, here's a 20-sided. And
Yeah.
so the 20-sided, I have 16 series going currently, besides the 9 that are original poems. And basically what I do is I throw that one and get my answer for which series to work on, and I throw the four-sided and I either get 30 minutes, an hour and a half, or 4 hours, or excuse me, 2 hours, right? So
There
basically
you go.
that takes out all the thinking. All I have to do is say, I'm going to work on writing. Let's find out what it is. And that has allowed me to just do the next chapter when it comes and let God decide what's going where. So, yeah.
That is certainly a way that I have never thought of before.
Yeah, I have all kinds of weird little systems this way to just take the angst of trying to figure out what to do, what to work on next. And I boil it
Mm-hmm.
down to, okay, either a roll of the dice or when I'm actually world building, 90% of my world building is asking questions. And I will actually do that in a chat app called Telegram. And it's just me
Yep.
basically chatting with myself. And I will say, what is the nature of this object within the world? And I'll type it out, and then I will stop and I will think, and I will type out an answer. And I take my answers and my kind of flow of thinking and then organize it into my Trello boards, which we'll get into in another question. Or I wrote it down for another question. But yeah, that's kind of my system.
There you go. If it works for you, that would probably drive me pretty crazy.
Well, it lets me focus on the things that I care about, which is actually developing the characters and moving through the story and performing the story accordingly. As opposed to thinking about broadly, like almost like a Machiavellian puppet master over this entire thing. I'm more just playing through the worlds and trying to keep people entertained. So,
Yeah. It's just so one thing I love about these interviews is that everybody comes at it from a different angle, and it's so cool to see how everybody does it.
mhm, definitely.
So, tell us about this worldwide warrior and how is he different from your other stories?
Worldwide Warrior is different because the whole thing allows me to focus on one human with such unique abilities and responsibilities that no one else in the world can possibly do what he does. It shows the extreme loneliness that can come, that can drive a person to good and bad. And it allows me to examine the deeper individualism that comes with isolation and the isolation of important work, and the finiteness of man. I think Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguires, were a big part of that for me. What they did do really, really well, and I don't think there's enough people talking about this, is you felt the extreme a great power comes great responsibility, but you really felt like this person was going to die with one bad decision.
Yeah.
And everyone he loved would be in danger if he made one bad decision. And that sort of thing amplified to an international level where this is like the operative the good guys have, period. Like if this is a situation where nothing else will work, you send him in. um I actually like I want him to be that good, but he's not Captain America. He's a normal he starts in the story as 20 years old. He's a mixed martial arts fighter who's had an incredible education growing up. History, politics, all these other sorts of things. He's been given just everything he could possibly need to do whatever, and it turns out he needs to do everything. So it's yeah, it allows for a really heartbreaking at times, and also just it's an expression of how I feel at times, for myself, just being, I feel like one person who's pioneering, all these different avenues because the world is decided it's gotten rid of epic poetry, that it's gotten rid of, all these beautiful and wonderful things. And I think we all feel that at certain times. We feel like the weight of the world's on our shoulders. And I just want to show and prove through the story you don't have to be alone, and you don't you shouldn't give up because the battle isn't ultimately yours, you know
Right. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean that's kind of the themes of Worldwide Warrior in a nutshell. So
All right. So let's see. So how do you go about publishing these specific stories?
right,
So you mentioned the bricks. Is that something that is that a term that you coined for
yes,
yourself, or is that a term that other people use?
that's a term that I use. It's BRIX, and I specifically chose that because I wanted it to be um I wanted a name for it because no one else really does this kind of thing. There's a few people who do storytelling in short form, but they don't really do a whole lot of serial. There's a few people who do serial storytelling, and on TikTok, it's slowly becoming a thing, but a lot of people use it as clickbaity style serial storytelling, which I don't like. um I, I do want to hook people and I want them to come to the next chapter, but I really want them to actually want to find out what's happening next, not just be like feeling fulfilled. You know what I mean? With one video. Um the reason I chose the word bricks is because I want it to be like I'm building a wall. I'm building a story out of these solid pieces of poetry, and that's one on top of another over time, and hopefully they accumulate into a massive, amazing structure. That was the reason I chose the name Bricks, and I spelled it differently so that if people look up Poetry Bricks with a BRIX, they will find me and not some other weirdness. So,
Makes sense. So you are working on 9 stories. That is so many.
yes, it is. It is.
So, and you're all at the same time. Like,
Well, it is, and it isn't. Like I said, it's whatever God wants me working on at any particular time, and I'm building the world in pieces.
right. Well, I know for me, the way my brain works
Mhm.
is when I'm writing a story, it just lives in my head, rent free,
Mhm.
and takes up quite a lot of brain space
Oh, yeah.
until it's finished, or until the characters decide to shut up and move away and leave me bereft with no end in sight.
And see, what you're
That's
what
always
you're
fun.
describing is absolutely what I went through from 13 years old until probably about at least 30. I had that times probably 15, all the
Mhm.
time, and was trying to work on them basically whenever something was being loudest, and it absolutely drove me nuts. And
Mhm.
the best way I found to, a lot of people joke about quieting the voices in your head as an author, but I'm being serious here. The
Yeah.
best way I found to quiet those voices, all those characters screaming at me because they want to live, then the way they live is through my animation. When I say
Hmm.
animation, I don't mean literally. I mean the writing and the telling. Um,
Right.
the best way I've found to make sure that all that's taken care of is give them to God. And I've given
Hmm.
them to God and said, okay, I'll take dice instead. Yeah, you don't have in your word the answers for this specific a question. And this is something that I
Hmm.
actually differ on from a lot of reformed people because they tends to be a quote unquote charismatic thing in the Protestant world, but I'm not I don't believe casting lots was some supernatural thing in the Old Testament, and I don't think it's some supernatural thing in the New Testament. I think it's just a simple acknowledgement that God holds all the zeros and ones in his hand and that you can trust him to give you an answer. Now, if you're looking for an answer that's already in scripture and you're rolling the dice for it, sorry, buddy, that's not how this works. He gave you a specific answer for a specific question. I just know that he did not give me what am I supposed to write today in the Bible. So roll the
Yeah, that'd
dice.
be a little tricky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah.
All right. Well, how about you tell us about some of your other projects?
hmm I mentioned two here that I wanted to mention. They're kind of fan favorites. They've been the ones that have been doing well lately. One is Ghost Trucker, which I can delve into more if you want, but I'll just read the little
Go
bits for
ahead.
each of these. That is Mike Craft is your standard lonely trucker on the open road, but something paranormal keeps following him. It's a pretty straightforward sort of paranormal series, similar to like a Stranger Things or something of
Mhm.
that nature. Signs is a big, even though I'm not a huge fan of the movie in general, it is a big influence on me because my parents watched it a lot growing up and everything. I like some of it. And then the other is The Idiot's Guide to Illegal Tech Repair. Yes, that's a long name. But I think it's funny. So it's okay. In a future where obsolete technology has become illegal to own or repair, groups of criminals have sought to earn plenty of illegal coin selling their services. One such crew has lots of secrets to tell. So, those are two of the ones that people have really enjoyed. I also have more superhero stuff. I have a fantasy series that I've been doing a lot of work on lately called Notes of Destiny. That's some of the deepest world building I've had to do because I realized my stuff was paling in comparison to what I really love in fantasy. And the reason was I wasn't doing enough world building. So,
Mm.
that one I didn't roll dice for. I just went ahead and got it to a place where I feel comfortable continuing writing, and then started rolling dice again because God laid it on my heart
Okay.
to do it. So sometimes there's a wrench in the works like that. But yeah.
And are all these poetry bricks as well?
Yes, yes. I almost exclusively publish some poetry bricks right now. I am exploring other avenues for the future. I have some friends who've been trying, including you, who've been trying to work on Idiot's Guide to Illegal Tech Repair in a motion comic film format. And we kind of stalled out for various reasons, but we're working on it. And we have um, some other I'd love to do books, but there doesn't seem to be a big demand for it yet. I'm kind of waiting as far as anything that I can sell. I'm waiting for people to actually ask for what they would like, and instead publishing mainly online. One of the things I'm hoping to do is go to some flea markets and just give away little cards. I actually have one. This is a Poetry Bricks one, but I want to do specific series versions. I have a little card here. This is copy paper in a baseball card holder, plastic baseball card holder, cut down to a 1:1 aspect ratio, and it has a QR code on the back. And I want to give those out to people at a flea market, pay for a booth, and maybe even tell some stories live score it with my iPad and GarageBand, and do the bard thing. But we'll see if we get a chance to do that sometime soon.
Let's jump off the questions I gave you for a minute and talk about that bard thing.
Yeah, totally.
Tell us about it. That's not a word you hear these days.
Yeah, I have a whole video on my channel, which I just got a handle now. YouTube's giving handles out now. They're doing a new thing. So youtube.com or it's YouTube, and then my handle is at JDL Storyteller, JDL Joshua David Ling Storyteller. And I have a whole video on Be Your Family's Bard, and that's sort of like my phrase. There are three things that are often referenced with the term bard, and I think what I mean by bard is somewhere in the middle of all three. The first is like Shakespeare and great literature of the days of old, and it's sort of this intimidating academic study at this point, right? And that's where it kind of falls apart, but it is like of old. Then there's also the Dungeons and Dragons bard, your typical like character who's in your Dungeons and Dragons stories who tries to seduce the dragon with a cute song. um, and that is kind of what I'm going for, a sort of Jack Blackish energy, something kind of goofy and fun and weird, but it's not entirely that. There is seriousness to what I do as well, so it kind of falls apart there. And then the other is and this is the least referenced version, but some people get this because of Stephen Lawhead's fiction and some other stuff. The Celtic bard were the druids of old who actually, and it's where we kind of get the word bard from, is that period in history and that area of the world. They would set down the oral traditions of their people, and they would teach it, orally back and forth with a whole group of other bards, and they would have a bard school, and they would be sort of like pastors almost, but also just, they were pastors, they were priests, they were the keepers of the history and the tales, and they would tell of the great feats of the kings, and they would promote their kings in the Middle Ages and all that other kind of stuff. And so that one is sort of what I'm going for, but it's more specifically localized when it comes to Be Your Family's Bard, right? And what I mean by that is, don't just be your king's bard, the bard of Augusta, Georgia, right? I'm working for my family, and I'm trying to teach them the stories of our family and teach them what we really believe through those stories. And in doing so, you're going to be keeping the family stories, the family history along with that, the songs, and all those sorts of things for the encouragement of your family. And I don't think it's just fathers who can do this. I'm a father, I'm a husband, but also wives, brothers, sisters. And I think every family needs at least one bard, one person who is the encourager, who is the keeper of the tales, who says, remember what God did for us back when he fixed our car when we had nothing. Remember the person who saved our family back a couple generations back when grandfather almost died in World War II. All these various things to point back continually to the faithfulness of God, and point forward to the hope that has been set down in the scripture.
Nice. So, all of your stories are kind of more verbal, I guess,
Mhm.
rather than like the written word.
They are written, but yes, that I prefer to publish orally because I believe poetry in particular is something that you can feel more when you hear it.
Mhm.
I do want to focus on some more avenues, particularly for some friends who are hard of hearing or deaf. But I have not landed on a way that is most satisfying to me or my fans yet. So still working on that.
All right. So, why do you tell stories? I mean, I suppose you
Yeah.
touched on it a little bit with that bard thing, but
Yeah. I wrote down because God made me to tell stories. He made me to tell stories. It is a part of my nature. It is God's choice for how I should reflect him within time. And when I say time, I mean as an overarching cosmic concept. God makes everyone to reflect him in one way or another. And some are warped and twisted by sin and create an ugly image. And some are better than others because of what Christ has done to clean the mirror, so to speak.
Mm,
And the way in which he has given me to emulate him is essentially a lot of what happens in Genesis, a lot of what is expounded in Hebrews. And it's just the idea of someone who is uh, creating like the creator, who is encouraging and beautifying and Tom bombadilling all up around these hills, singing and spreading joy.
very nice. So what helps you to write?
I wrote down some of the physical comforts and things that I use. We talked about the dice, which I was actually able to get into the system. That was interesting. But I have mood lighting. Let me see here. Hold on. There it is. I have a little controller here, and we can turn some blue. I know it doesn't show super well, but you can see it changing. And I'll change it to whatever it is for the series that I'm working on, just something that aesthetically connects. And I'll turn on some applicable genre on YouTube, and just listen to maybe a lo-fi mix or something. Not always lo-fi, other genres and things. I also have a very clicky mechanical keyboard here, which I just scrolled away from my answers. So one moment. Let's see here. Very clicky keyboard, which you probably could hear. It has nice clicky cherry blue switches. A lot of people think I'm psychotic for having a show and having those instead of the silent switches, but I like the click. I tend to write the bulk of my stuff in the app Telegram, which I explained, and then I move it to Trello, and I organize it in Trello. Trello boards have been really, really good for me. They work in the same way my brain does, which is more vertical than left to right, which is very strange. Um, and it's just been more comfortable. And yeah, I tend to want to spend more time playing in the world with my characters and finding out more and more who they are, and then letting them tell the story. And also just let the poetry be the tone. That's been a big thing, is making the words echo in such a way that you can feel the tension. So those are, but yeah, those are the things that help me write, is just immersing myself in the world as much as I can, and then when and then actually writing when I need another poem written.
All right. And what is writing or storytelling, I suppose, taught you?
It's allowed me to delve deeper into the way God's formed the world. What we do as authors, songwriters, creators is inherently similar to aspects of God's creativity, like I was talking about. And the way in which I love and hate my heroes and villains has helped me understand God's love and providence in a way that I probably wouldn't have been able to understand otherwise. I can understand how I want good for my characters, but I have to put them through hell to get them there. And I have villains that are going to succeed and succeed and succeed until their untimely, amazing, and often grisly demise. And how satisfying those things can be to a writer, I can only imagine how much more satisfying they are to God Himself. So that has been something that has helped shape my worldview and shape all of the things that he's given me in this world, and shaped my place. It's made me humble, and it's made me appreciative and full of thanksgiving for the amazing world that he's given me to have my little sandbox in.
Awesome. So who are you inspired by in your writing?
Lewis and Tolkien are the really biggest. I know that's a whole lot of people, especially Logosophia, but I mean, obviously. But there's a few that inspired me in other areas that I don't hear about as often. The two main ones that come to mind are Hans Christian Andersen and Joss Whedon. I know, two crazy ends of a spectrum, but Anderson's. raw, just outpouring of his heart within fairy tales, I mean, he just gushes the emotion just out on the page, and you really feel it. So sincere, full of heartbreaking richness. And then Joss, he's had his issues up and down and been canceled and back and forth, but the thing that's amazing to me about him is he develops characters to a level where it's becomes automatic writing these characters. Like you read every line. I think he actually does a pass in his scripts where he will, and I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling he goes in and does a pass where he looks at each line individually, almost like flashcards, and says, okay, who said this? And if you cannot tell who said it without knowing, like, you have to make the line better. And that's a tool I definitely would recommend to people if they don't feel good on their dialogue. You have to make sure every line as best as you can. I mean, if they just say one word, that's hard, but not necessarily impossible. You make it so each and every person has their own distinct voice. I have the advantage of actually breathing life into the voice through the way I publish. So which characters are which, and I've had a lot of voice acting and training and stuff in that. But like Joss, just you could look at a script and know who almost every line is from, and I love that he connects the building of the character so deeply with the dialogue that they give to other characters. So
All right. And what is your advice to other storytellers?
I'm gonna read it straight up because I think I did a good job on this. Don't write to format. Be a pioneer. Learn the rules, but very quickly discard the ones that tell you what you should write for the market. Write what you want and do it to the best of your ability in whatever avenue you choose to publish in. The reason I give this advice is because the only people who are remembered for their work, the only work that is remembered beyond the artist, are the ones that change the mold or shape a new mold entirely. And I think that especially in a world where everything is changing technologically every couple weeks, the best thing that you can do is pick something that pleases you and be an ambassador for why it pleases you. So,
Well said. Uh, One thing that you haven't gotten to talk about yet is your podcast. So, can you
mm,
tell us a little bit about that?
I think a lot of people who read and listen to the magazine know about me, but maybe some of you don't. I have a podcast called Poets at War. And poetry books are also put out in a podcast form too, if you ever want to listen. It does jump around from world to world, episode to episode, but still you can pick out the ones that you want to listen to. But Poets at War is a show specifically for Christian artists. I have conversations with them. I've had Sarah on several times. I've had Ian Wilson of this magazine several times. TK Wilson as well, who's also been on here. I'd love to have some more of you guys. I had Matthew Pilgrim on one time, a few other people who've helped with the magazine. But I've also had Phil Lawler and a lot of friends from Moscow, Idaho, like Marcus Pittman, and I've got one coming out this Monday from Chocolate Knox. For those of you who know him, David Shannon. And so, yeah, basically the main focus is to just have conversations amongst Christian artists. For those who are not artists, they've found them entertaining and interesting because we are an eclectic and strange group who tends to get pushed to the side when serious matters are in play. But also, like I said, some I've had some people who are artists who are encouraged by it, and people who are not artists who are intrigued by it because they don't really get to hang out with artists that often for whatever reason. And I think that it is opening a lot of avenues in that regard, and people are able to explain their views, and all that kind of stuff. I also have the sub show General's Report, which is part of Poets at War, but it's solo episodes with me monologuing on a particular topic, sort of like I'm doing now, where I do partly what I've written and partly what comes to mind. So if you're into that sort of thing, whether the conversations, which is the main show, or the sub show General's Report, by all means, love to have you on. Check it out. It's at my website, joshuadavidling.com, which I'm sure we were going to plug at the end, but might as well do it now. Go ahead.
There you go. Is there anything else that you want to add?
Yeah. This is a poem I wrote a little bit ago. It's short, but I wanted to go ahead and perform something short. If it takes 1,000,000 light bulbs to see one finally glow, if it takes 1,001 tries, I'll gladly make it so. If I have to do it daily, I'll gladly suffer the grind, for it's dragons that I'm chasing, for a princess prize divine. That one's called "Do It," like Shia
I
LaBeouf. Do
like it.
it.
I like it. All right. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for joining us today and for all the work that you do for Logo Sophia. For those of you who might not know, Joshua also writes a new story in the issues of Logo Sophia.
Exclusive
The
to Logo
Knights of
Sophia.
exactly. The Knights of Adonai, I believe it's
Yep.
called. Um, this month, or excuse me, this season, we are publishing the second installment of that, and I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yep.
So,
It's also a prequel to my Guardians of Atlantis series. For those of you who are interested, the Knights of Adonai are a modern order of knights, and I am exploring their origins in the Logo Sophia magazine series, Knights of Adonai. So yeah,
all right, Joshua, thank you so much.
thank you, Sarah. Thank you.